The man I trusted with my life stole my wife. My revenge was a controlled burn. When I saw my wife with one of my own men, I didn't yell. I didn't fight. I just scheduled a private training drill because a problem like that, you handle it in the fire. Welcome back. The story you're about to hear is about the difference between the dangers you can see and the ones you can't. It's about a man who spent his life walking into fires only to discover the worst one was burning in his own home. My name is Sam, and this is the story of how I chose to fight it. If you believe that sometimes the coldest plans are forged in the hottest flames, make sure you subscribe. This is a fire you'll want to see through to the end. When I saw my wife with one of my own men, I didn't yell. I didn't fight. I just scheduled a private training drill because a problem like that, you handle it in the fire. Trust is the bedrock of my world. Not as a vague concept, but as a life-saving absolute. It's the implicit faith that the man holding the ladder won't flinch, that the hand guiding the hose will hold steady, that the voice on the other end of the radio is your lifeline in a world of black smoke and roaring chaos. At Fire Station 4 in the small, rain-swept town of Northwood, Oregon, trust is more than a word. It's the unspoken oath that makes us a brotherhood. For 30 of my 58 years, I was the captain of that brotherhood. I was the man who made the hard calls, the one who was always last out. My crew wasn't just a team. They were an extension of my own body, my own will. I would have walked through a wall of flame for any one of them. My marriage to Laura was supposed to be the place the fire couldn't reach. She was my anchor, the calm harbor where I moored my soul after a brutal 24-hour shift. Our life was the antithesis of the screaming sirens and splintering wood that defined my days. We had a sturdy craftsman house on a quiet, tree-lined street, a garden where Laura could lose herself for hours among her hydrangeas, and a shared history that spanned 3 decades. We were a landmark in our own right, Sam and Laura, as predictable and constant as the Pacific Northwestern rain. Her role as the fire captain's wife was a demanding one, full of missed dinners, lonely nights, and the constant low-level hum of anxiety every time the town siren wailed. She bore it with a serene strength that I deeply admired. I saw her as my partner in every sense of the word, the one who guarded our life so I could guard the town's. My love for her was a fierce, primal thing, honed by years of witnessing how quickly a life could be extinguished. I thought our foundation wasn't just solid. I thought it was fireproof. Looking back, I see now how a man can spend his whole life reading smoke signals in the sky and miss the ones rising from his own floorboards. The man who lit the match was named Jake Riley. He was 26, with a square jaw, clear eyes, and the kind of restless, fearless energy that all good firefighters have. He was the best rookie I'd seen in a decade, a natural. He read situations with an instinct that couldn't be taught, and he moved with an easy, athletic grace. I saw a younger, rawer version of myself in him. I took him under my wing, making him my personal project. I pushed him, mentored him, and gave him the kind of trust I reserved for my most seasoned veterans. He quickly became a part of the station's inner circle, which by extension meant he became a part of my life. He'd come over for our Sunday barbecues, laughing with Laura on the porch as I tended the grill. He was endlessly respectful, always calling me Cap and her ma'am, but with an easy charm that put everyone at ease. I encouraged the friendship. It felt right. He was the future of the station, the son I never had. Laura seemed to enjoy his youthful energy, a welcome change from the weary silence I often brought home with me. I saw it as a good thing, a sign of a healthy, interconnected life. I was a fool, a blind, trusting fool. The human brain is wired for pattern recognition, a survival trait. But the heart is a master of denial. The patterns of betrayal were forming for months, but my heart refused to see them. I see them now in perfect, agonizing clarity. There was the time Laura baked a batch of her famous apple pies, one for the station bake sale and an extra one for the boys on C shift. I found out later that Jake, who wasn't even on C shift, had taken the entire pie home. There was the way she'd ask about him after a tough call, her concern seeming just a little more pointed, more personal than it was for the other men. There were the phone calls that would end abruptly when I walked into the room, her explanation of just one of the girls, a little too quick, a little too bright. Each instance on its own was a puff of smoke, easily dismissed, a wisp of steam. But together they were the signs of a slow, smoldering fire, the kind that burns deep within the walls, quietly eating away at the structure until the whole thing is ready to collapse. The collapse began at the town's annual 4th of July picnic at Miller Park. The whole community was there, a sea of checkered blankets and laughing families. As captain, I was on duty at the department's grill, flipping burgers with a few of my men. It was a perfect day, the kind of day that feels quintessentially American, full of an easy, unexamined happiness. Laura was sitting with a group of wives from the station, a picture of Grace in a blue summer dress. Jake was nearby, effortlessly charming, the town's golden boy. I was watching him, a sense of pride swelling in my chest as I saw how easily he fit in, how much everyone liked him. He was a credit to my station. And then I saw it. He walked over to their table, ostensibly to grab a soda. He said something that made Laura laugh, a genuine, uninhibited laugh that I hadn't heard in a long time. As he turned to walk away, he placed his hand on her forearm. It was a brief, simple gesture, but it wasn't. It was the way his fingers curled slightly, a subtle act of possession. It was the way her laughter caught in her throat, her body leaning into his touch for a fraction of a second. And it was the way she immediately glanced over at me, 100 yards away at the grill, her eyes wide with a fleeting, undeniable guilt before she composed herself. For the rest of the world, it was nothing. But for me, it was a flashover. In that single, silent moment, my entire world ignited. The air was sucked from my lungs. The cheerful sounds of the picnic, the laughter, the music, the pop of a firecracker faded into a deafening roar in my ears. The small, dismissed puffs of smoke from the past months, the pie, the phone calls, the pointed questions, all converged into a raging, undeniable inferno. I didn't drop the spatula. I didn't shout her name. The years of training kicked in, a lifetime of conditioning to remain calm in the face of chaos. My heart rate, which should have been skyrocketing, seemed to slow down, each beat a heavy, cold thud. A professional calm, an icy detachment settled over me. Scene assessment. The fire wasn't in a building, it was in my life. The victims weren't strangers, they were my wife and my brother. The structural integrity wasn't in the walls of my house, but in the foundation of my 30-year marriage and the sacred code of my firehouse. And the arsonists were the two people I trusted most in the world. The drive home that evening was the quietest of our lives. Laura chattered nervously about the picnic, about who said what, about the fireworks. I just drove, my hands gripping the wheel, my responses monosyllabic. I was looking at the woman beside me, the lines of her face so familiar they were etched onto my soul, and seeing a complete stranger. Every word from her mouth felt like a lie, every smile a betrayal. That night, I lay in our bed, the space between us a cold, vast chasm. She slept, or pretended to, while I stared into the darkness, my mind a firestorm of images and questions. My first instinct was primal, violent. I wanted to confront them, to see the shame on their faces, to unleash the rage that was burning a hole in my gut. But then, the captain took over from the husband. Rage is an uncontrolled burn. It's messy, unpredictable. It consumes everything, including you. I had spent my life controlling fires, not starting them. My response had to be controlled, precise. I would not allow this to be a wildland fire consuming everything in its path. This would be a controlled burn. I would choose the time, I would choose the place, and I would control the outcome. My revenge would not be about destroying my wife. She was already a casualty, a part of the structure that was already lost. My revenge would be about him, Jake. The brother who had broken the trust that is the only thing that keeps us alive in a fire. He had brought the fire into my house. I would bring him into a fire of my own making. A fire he wouldn't be able to walk away from. I would test his soul in the only crucible that mattered, and I would watch it turn to ash. The next few weeks were a study in deception. I was the perfect husband, the perfect captain. I was attentive to Laura, hiding the cold knot of disgust in my stomach. I was the same mentor to Jake, clapping him on the back, offering advice, all while my mind was a cold, calculating machine, designing the mechanism of his destruction. He saw my attention as a sign that he was getting away with it. He had no idea he was a fly walking deeper into a spider's web. The perfect opportunity presented itself in the form of a required training evolution. A two-man, low-visibility, high-heat search and rescue drill. It was a dangerous, advanced exercise designed to test a firefighter's most fundamental skills under extreme duress. It was also the perfect self-contained stage for what I had planned. In the station's briefing room, I announced the pairings. "Riley!" I barked, using his last name, a subtle shift from the familiar Jake. "You're with me. I want to see if all that time on the porch has made you soft. We're up first." A few of the men chuckled. Jake just beamed, his chest puffing out. He thought it was a challenge, an honor. He looked at me with those clear, trusting eyes, and for a moment I almost pitied him. He was a rookie walking into a veteran's trap, a moth flying toward a blowtorch. The burn tower stood 4 stories high, a grim concrete monolith against the perpetually gray Oregon sky. Inside, it was a configurable maze of concrete block and steel doors, a place designed to break you down and build you back up. On this day, it would only do the former. We suited up in silence, the familiar ritual of buckles, straps, and Velcro, a stark contrast to the storm raging inside me. We went on air, the hiss and crackle of our regulators filling the air. The scenario was simple. A live fire on the first floor, creating a blinding, superheated environment on the floors above. Our objective was to find a 150-pound training dummy, the victim, on the 3rd floor and bring it out. I looked at Jake one last time before we put on our masks. "You stay with me, you listen to me, you do exactly as I say." "Understood?" "Yes, Cap. Loud and clear," he said, his voice confident. We entered the building, and the world ceased to exist. We were immediately plunged into a thick, oily blackness. The smoke was so dense it felt solid, a physical weight pressing down. We dropped to our hands and knees and began to crawl, the floor hot beneath our gloved hands. The only orientation was the wall to our right and the sound of each other's breathing. The roar of the fire below was a constant, hungry beast. This was my world, a world of pure instinct and training. We moved slowly, methodically, sweeping our arms in practiced arcs, searching for the victim. The heat was immense, a physical blow that seeped through nearly 100 pounds of protective gear. We were breathing hard, the regulators working overtime. We found the stairs and began the slow, arduous climb to the 3rd floor. The 3rd floor landing was an oven. The heat banked down from the ceiling was intense enough to feel like a physical weight on our helmets. This was the moment. We began our search pattern in one of the rooms. The smoke was thinner here, a hazy, swirling gray. In the dim light, I could just make out Jake's outline a few feet away. "Jake," I said, my voice coming out as a flat, metallic rasp through the radio speaker. How's Laura's garden this year? The hydrangeas? They in bloom yet? He stopped crawling. Cap? What? The hydrangeas, I repeated, my voice dangerously calm. She loves them. You must have noticed. All the time you've been spending over there. His breathing hitched. I could hear the sharp intake of air, the sudden spike of panic. This was a conversation we weren't supposed to be having. Not here, not now. Cap, I don't think this is the time, he stammered. You're right, I said. It's not. And then I set my trap. I reached down and, in a single practiced movement, I uncoupled the primary regulator from my air tank. The life-giving hiss of air stopped. Then I keyed my radio to the emergency channel. Mayday, 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 this is Captain Miller. Air loss. Regulator failure. I'm on the 3rd floor, Alpha side. I'm trying to get to my backup, but I'm disoriented. It was all a lie. My backup was inches from my hand. I wasn't disoriented, but he didn't know that. All he knew was the sound of his captain, his brother, choking in the dark. The Mayday call is a thunderclap in our world. It means a firefighter is about to die. The protocol is absolute. You drop everything, you find your brother, and you share your air. You get him out, or you die with him. You never, ever leave a man behind. I slumped against the wall, faking a gasp, and I waited. I gave him the chance to be the man he pretended to be, the brave firefighter, the loyal brother. I heard nothing but the roar of the fire and the sound of my own blood pounding in my ears. 1 second, 2 seconds, 3, an eternity. He should have been on me in an instant, forcing his emergency regulator into my mask. But there was only silence. He was hesitating. He was calculating the risk. He was choosing himself over me. That was it. That was the moment my revenge was complete. Finally, after a 4th agonizing second, I heard him scramble towards me. Cap, I'm here! I'm coming! But it was too late. I had already reconnected my regulator. I stood up, the hiss of my own air supply a triumphant sound in the darkness. He stopped short, a confused, terrified animal. Drill's over, I said, my voice flat. I keyed my radio. Command, this is Miller. Cancel the Mayday. False alarm. We're coming out. We exited the tower into the cool, gray air. We ripped off our masks, gulping in the clean oxygen. The other firefighters were rushing towards us, their faces etched with concern. I held up a hand to stop them. I turned and faced Jake. His face was ashen, streaked with soot, his eyes wide with a shame so profound it was almost pitiful. I didn't need to say a word. He knew. In the place where it mattered most, in the heart of the fire, I had tested him, and he had failed in the most fundamental way a firefighter can. He hadn't just betrayed a husband, he had betrayed the brotherhood. He had hesitated. The next day, his transfer request was on my desk. He was gone by the end of the week, vanished from the station, from the town, from our lives. The official story was that he couldn't handle the pressures of the job. Only he and I knew the truth. I went home. The fire was out. The affair was over. Laura never asked what happened. She didn't have to. I simply placed the St. Florian medal she'd given him on her pillow. She saw it, and a part of her broke that would never be mended. She knew he had chosen to leave. She would never know the choice I had given him. My house is still standing. My marriage, in name, continues. But it's a burned-out structure, cold and silent. I won. I extinguished the threat. I protected my brotherhood. But every night, I go to sleep with the smell of smoke in my lungs, the ghost of a fire that can never truly be put out. What is the price of honor? And what do you do when the thing you save is no longer worth keeping? It's a question I live with every day. If this story made you think, please leave a comment. Your stories help me understand my own. Thank you for listening.